It's been 476 days since the war began, since more than 250 hostages were taken into Gaza. And now on this Saturday, we are at the second release phase of the first stage of this ceasefire. 4 Israeli women soldiers are set to be released in any minute. We're waiting for this to happen. We're coming to you live from a hostage square in central Tel Aviv. As you can see, there are many people here, all of them coming to watch this together. Usually this square is empty at this time of the day. Saturday morning, it gets full every Saturday in the evening for the weekly protest, the weekly Saturday protest. But at this time, it is 11 a.m. Local time, and hundreds of people, possibly even more, are here at this square to watch together the release of 4 more Israeli women, all of them women soldiers. It has to be said, they're set to be handed from Hamas to the Red Cross at any minute. This is something that is set to happen at any minute. The images coming from Palestine Square in the city of Gaza shows vehicles of the Red Cross which are set to this is where the hostages are set to arrive. This is where the handover, the Palestine Square in Gaza is where the handover is meant to take place from Hamas to the Red Cross, and later on these vehicles of the Red Cross will drive to the Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip, and then finally, after 476 days, back into Israeli territory, back into Israeli hands, back into their families. The process, which is meant to happen and set to begin any time now, as we mentioned, handover from Hamas to the International Red Cross, from the Red Cross after a short drive to the Israeli forces, and then into Israeli territory, where finally, after 476 days, these 4 women soldiers will be meeting with their families, with their parents, and later on, if everything is okay, if their medical situation is okay, they're meant to be flown by helicopters to the Beilinson Medical Center in central Tel Aviv, not far from Tel Aviv, not far from where we are, the medical center in central Israel. And of course, there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement, a lot of hope here in Israel, finally seeing 4 women hostages. But at this time, it also has to be clear that there's a lot of concern. There's still 2 civilian women in Gaza, and they were meant to be released before the soldiers, but they were not on the list. They're not released today. Does that mean they're not alive? No one really knows. Hamas is set to release a list of a list detailing exactly who of the 33 hostages who are set to be released in this first stage, who is alive, who is not alive. Are these 2 women civilians alive or not? Maybe we will know later this afternoon. And another issue, after the 4 women soldiers will arrive into Israel today, some 200 Palestinian prisoners will be released, 50 prisoners for every woman soldier. And out of those 200, 120 are people serving life sentences, many of them sitting in prisons, being sentenced for murdering many Israelis. But Israel understands that this is the price that has to be paid for this release. That, of course, raises many questions, many issues, but at the moment here at the square, a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. People here are watching giant screens as any minute. The people here are hoping to see the 4 women, the 4 Israeli hostages handed in, finally, from Hamas to the hands of the Red Cross. And as we're watching the images from Gaza, we have to understand, you can see hundreds of people here, many of them are wearing yellow shirts. You can see they're holding images, pictures of those the soldiers who've been away from home for 476 days, and hopefully they will be back home in just a few minutes. It may happen. We're seeing the images from Gaza right now as we're speaking. The vehicles are there. Hamas operatives are there. The vehicles of the Red Cross are there, and it may happen at any minute now. A lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. This comes 6 days after the first stage of the ceasefire, in which three women civilians were released. That happened last Sunday, and now 6 days later, we're speaking of four more women soldiers, which are set to be released any minute now. Any minute now, as we're watching the images from Gaza. A lot of anticipation here. What will happen later on? The next stage, in which three more women are set to be released, that is set to happen next Saturday. Will it happen? Will it not happen? 7 days is a long time. A lot of things can go wrong, but judging by what we've seen so far in the first week of the ceasefire, things are working as planned. On the first day of the ceasefire, as was agreed upon, three Israeli women were released. Here, now, as we are standing here on the seventh day of the ceasefire, four more women are to be released in just a few minutes. True, there were supposed to be two more women civilians released, but despite the fact that there is a breach, Israel is saying that they will accept this as long as four women are coming back alive. Israel will accept this breach as long as four women are coming back alive. What's the fate of the other two women, the civilian women in captivity? No one really knows. And there is one more woman, a woman soldier, who is also still in captivity. She might be released next week. Many questions, many things to be answered. Maybe we will get answers later on in the day, if and when Hamas releases a list detailing exactly who is alive and who is not. But for the moment, all that is put aside, as there is great excitement here in Hosted Square in Tel Aviv. Great excitement all across the state of Israel, as finally we're seeing four more women about to be released in just a few minutes. They're set to be transferred from the hands of Hamas to the hands of the Red Cross. Shortly after, they will be driven into the hands of the Israeli forces, ending finally a very, very long process of 476 days in which these women are imprisoned. You can see here at the square a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, a lot of hope. Let's hope that this actually ends, and then that just in a few more minutes, four more Israeli women hostages will be back in Israel, will be back with their families. The Israeli forces, we're seeing in Gaza a certain ceremony there, a handover ceremony between Hamas and the Red Cross. It seems as if this is now happening. All of the people here are watching this ceremony. Of course, it raises quite a lot of difficult issues for Israelis, but the bottom line is that in just a few minutes, four more women hostages will be back home, will be back with their families. Jonathan Regev, CGTN, Hostage Square, Tel Aviv.
Yes, here in the Gaza Strip, now it's just starting. The second phase, or the second step after 1 week of the ceasefire deal was reached between Israel and Hamas by mediation of Qatar, Egypt, and United States. Here in the Gaza Strip, a short while ago, the Islamist militant Hamas group released 4 women hostages, Israeli hostages, in the heart of Gaza City, where tens of masked men from the group gathered in the square of Palestine in the heart of Gaza City, surrounded by the vehicles of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Were able to release 4 women hostages in the heart of the Gaza City amidst the crowd in front of the many crowds over there. This is a major step in the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas signed or announced last Sunday in Gaza, or in Doha actually, where Qatar has been involved, and also Egypt and United States as well. So this comes after the Hamas group released last week 3 women hostages, now 7 Israelis. 7 women hostages have been already released by Hamas to the International Committee of the Red Cross and then to the Israeli side. This step is important in the sense that the Palestinians, about 1.2 Palestinians, 2 million Palestinians, have been forcibly displaced from their homes, their neighborhoods, towns in the northern Gaza Strip and in Gaza City itself because of the Israeli war on the Gaza Strip, mainly intended at the Islamist Hamas party. These people will start returning back to their homes, to their lives back in northern Gaza and Gaza City, starting from later today, either later today or at least tomorrow morning, Sunday. They will start getting back to their homes and neighborhoods, beginning with a walk down. They will be only able to walk down from the south of the middle area, central Gaza Strip, towards the Gaza City, walking down on the road, not by vehicles. The vehicles can be run or can be allowed to go through the Netzarim corridor on the Salah al-Din corridor or Netzarim corridor to the east of Gaza, just close to the east of the Gaza Strip. But the western coastal road will be dedicated for the people to walk down about 5 to 7 kilometers until reach the closest destination to Gaza City. Then they can ride vehicles from there. As you might see here behind me in Khan Yunis, we are now in the Khan Yunis city in south of the Gaza Strip. Yes, the situation is a situation of almost a preparation by those who have been displaced here, including here in southern Gaza Strip city and other parts of the southern Gaza Strip. They are being prepared to go back to their homes and to their towns in the northern Gaza Strip and in Gaza City. We have seen some people today morning, wrapping up their luggage and their things, their stuff, putting them in vehicles in a preparation to go and to drive towards the southern, to the west of Gaza City, western coastal road, starting from the Nusayrat refugee camp to the west of Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza Strip. This is a very remarkable moment for the Palestinians who have been bearing the brunt of this war over 15 months of the fighting between Hamas and Israel that has affected and impacted the daily lives, every aspect of life in for the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in general. And also let us here note that the people who are going to go back to their homes in Gaza City and northern Gaza, many of them or majority of them will not be able to see their homes that have been already completely or partially damaged because of the intensive Israeli army actions over those areas for the past period of time. Many of them, actually, we have spoken to a number of them, and a number of them say that they are not going to to stay in their homes, which are already battered. Some of them had rented some places or some apartments here in southern Gaza or in central Gaza Strip, which was the least affected area by the Israeli war in the territory. This is a mix of feeling for the people. From one hand, they are happy and they feel happy that they are going to return back to their neighborhoods and towns and homes. From the other hand, they are feeling a bit sad because they will not see a life over there. People over there in northern Gaza and Gaza City still say that the goods and commodities are not that much available in the territory in light of the recent truce deal between Israel and Hamas. Some of them told us actually that the prices are still high and unaffordable by the population. Many commodities are still lacking in the territory, and water supplies is very scarce over there because of the destruction of the networks of water, electricity and telephone lines over those areas of the Gaza City and the northern Gaza Strip. But still, they feel that it is their given right to catch up with their lives that they have been deprived of because of the war and the intensity of the Israeli war on the Gaza Strip. I'd like here to refer to the point that the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas signed in Doha last week states that the Israeli side will allow at least 600 truckloads of aid, assistance, goods and commodities for Gaza on daily basis. So far, more than 2,000 truckloads since last week, more than 2,000 truckloads have entered the Gaza Strip, including many goods and commodities that are concentrated actually in the central Gaza Strip in south of the territory. And these items include flour, beans, lentils, cooking oil, other related to the canned food, actually frozen meat, poultry and beef meat, all frozen meat. Yes, not the fresh ones, but the quantities are getting larger than before the truce was instated between Israel and Hamas. And the people here just feel as being relieved. But many of them still cannot afford the prices of these goods and commodities, because the fact that majority of the population here have been deprived of access to their workplaces, to their functions, the various works, various jobs. So they are being depleted because of the war. They are hoping, the population here is hoping that the situation will improve in the upcoming days, in the upcoming weeks, with the truce is coming into real effect, with the steps are being taken in a very timely manner, like what I said. I hinted at the release of now the release of 4 women hostages, as well as the release of more Israelis, because in the first stage of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, which is said to last about 42 days, and then the second stage, yes, it is really reported and it is really stated in the ceasefire deal that 33 Israeli hostages will be finally released to Israel in the first stage. In return, the Israeli side will be able to, actually asked to release more Palestinian prisoners or detainees. In the last week, the Israelis released 90 Palestinian prisoners, majority female ones, from the West Bank and East Jerusalem. At this step for today, the step of releasing Israeli hostages, Israel is supposed to return back or to release and free 200 Palestinian prisoners from the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and some of them from Gaza. But a number of those Palestinian prisoners will be, according to the deal, will be actually transferred, will be transferred to outside of the territories, outside of Gaza, outside of the West Bank, outside of Jerusalem, which are all Palestinian territories, according to United Nations resolution of 242 of 1967. So they will be expelled, or they will be sent to exile outside of that's according to the deal, outside of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank or East Jerusalem. A number of those to be released by Israel will be those with high sentences, with lifetime sentences imposed on them by the Israeli courts or by the Israeli side. So in general, the situation here is quite calm, is quite a situation of waiting until there is a major change in the lives of the Palestinians who have been enduring the brunt, who have been enduring lots of suffering because of this war, and this suffering involves the death of more than 46,000 Palestinians. Half of them are said to be women and children inside their homes, as well as the injury of 100,000 Palestinians, others more than 100,000, including, or half of them are women and children. This is the situation, the suffering in terms of the loss of lives and the handicap that have been caused because of the war, of the war against the Gaza Strip. Many people have had their limbs amputated because of the intensive shelling and airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Let us also refer to the other parts, other forms of suffering for the Palestinians here in the Gaza Strip, which is the collapse of the economy, the collapse of the educational system, as well as the collapse of the health system here in the territories. More than 30 Gaza hospitals have been either completely or partially destroyed, and this has affected the health services being provided for the population in the time of war, in this time of war. Next week, or starting from this week actually, after Sunday, the Palestinian patients and injured ones will be able to move to outside of Gaza for treatment outside of the territory in hospitals, either in Rafah, in Egypt, in United Arab Emirates or Turkey. According to the agreement, to the ceasefire agreement, in the first stage, 300 Palestinians, including 50 injured and 50 patients, with their family members escorting them, will be able to travel through the Rafah crossing terminal that the Egyptian authorities have recently helped facilitate the road, facilitate or repair the damage caused by the Israeli war on the Egyptian, on the Palestinian side of the crossing. European observers will be in charge of letting the Palestinian out of Gaza, as well as other staff members who are Palestinians but not necessarily linked with the Islamist Hamas group that Israel does not want to control or to rule Gaza after the war comes to an end in the aftermath, in the wake of the 3 stages of the ceasefire. In terms of in terms of the trouble. In terms of other arrangements for the ceasefire, Palestinians now are trying to repair the national damage that they have been impacted because of the war, and there has been talk about a sort of negotiations, internal Palestinian talks between Palestinians amongst themselves, Hamas and other factions. Maybe the Palestinian Authority or Ramallah will be involved in this talk to the best of controlling the region or ruling the Gaza Strip or administering the Gaza Strip in the first day after the war, and not necessarily Hamas will be in control. The talk now is about a technocratic government made up of Palestinians who will be professionally responsible for the administration of the people's lives when the war comes to an end. CGTN, Rami Al-Mighari, in southern Gaza Strip.
To some breaking news now, Hamas has released 4 Israeli soldiers, and the women are now in the custody of the Israel Defense Forces. This is part of the ceasefire agreement that began last Sunday to end the 15-month-old war in Gaza. The 4 soldiers were all stationed at an observation post in Gaza when Hamas overran their base on October the 7th of 2023. Hamas said 200 prisoners will be released by Israel on Saturday as part of the exchange. Crowds of Palestinians gathered at a square in Gaza City during the release, where dozens of masked and armed Hamas members surrounded a podium. Well, the very latest on this, we're joined by Rami Al-Magari, who is in Gaza, and Jonathan Regev joins us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much to you both for bringing us the latest on this. Rami, let's begin with you. Footage we've seen from both Gaza and Tel Aviv show massive crowds of people on both sides during this time. Rami, what can you tell us about what's happening where you are and what you're hearing about the overall sentiment in the rest of Gaza about this? Well, it seems to have lost Rami. Hopefully we'll be able to get him back into the conversation. Let's cross over to Tel Aviv, where Jonathan is standing by. Jonathan, since October the 7th, we've seen so much pressure on the government there to get the hostages released. How is the second hostage release being received in Israel, Jonathan?
Of course, it is being received with happiness and joy. Finally, these 4 women soldiers are back in more than 15 months after they were kidnapped from their base, and this after 3 more hostages were released last Sunday. So 7 women hostages back in Israel altogether. At the same time, there's also great concern. First and foremost, we know that there are still 2 civilian women who are held in Gaza, and they were supposed to be freed before the women soldiers. Therefore, there's a lot of concern regarding their fate. That is one thing. And even the greatest supporters of the deal within Israeli society are well aware of the very expensive price that Israel is paying just today. We're speaking of some 200 Palestinian prisoners that are set to be released from Israeli prisons, 50 prisoners for every woman soldier. And not only that, 30 out of the 50 prisoners that will be released for every woman soldier is a prisoner serving life, meaning 120 prisoners serving life sentences will be released today from prisons, many of them convicted for killing many Israelis. So the Israeli society is well aware of the heavy prices that Israel is paying. The Israeli society is well aware of the fact that 90 hostages are still in Gaza. There is some illusion, some way to see 26 of them still to be released in what remains of the first stage of the ceasefire. For the remaining 64, there's no real illusion as to when, how, where, and when especially they will be released. All that is true, but for now, a lot of happiness to finally see these 4 women soldiers released. They're already in Israeli territory. As far as we understand, their health situation is relatively good, and they will be soon flown into hospitals in central Israel for further examination. Now they're back reunited with their families, again, as far as we understand, in relatively good condition.
Well, let's come back to you, Rami, in Gaza. What can you tell us about what's happening where you are and what you're hearing about the overall sentiment in the rest of Gaza about this?
Yes, actually, the sentiment right now, is a sentiment of hope and optimism. As this step that was taken earlier today, the release of 4 Israeli soldier women to the Israeli side through the International Red Cross, the International Committee of the Red Cross, is connected with the return of the displaced Palestinians. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, where we are now, will be able to return back to their homes in Gaza City and in northern Gaza Strip, towns of Jabalia, Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun. This is a good step for them. It's a sentiment of hope, sentiment of joy, because they are going to rejoice with their lives very soon, starting from tomorrow morning, or maybe later later today, many people have stuffed their things, wrapped up their luggage in a preparation to go back to their homes, even walking down as stated by the ceasefire. At this stage and these days, they will be using their food to go back to their homes and neighborhoods in northern Gaza and Gaza City. But majority of them are being happy to do that. But let me just on the other hand say that or mention one important fact, that many people who are going to return back will not find their homes because their homes have been already destroyed, either completely or partially, by the Israeli army actions across the Gaza City and northern Gaza Strip. Some of them will prefer to go and to see what happened to their homes, and others will and then come back to the southern area where they have been able to rent some places or homes in compensation or instead of their homes that have been destroyed. But in general, the mood is a mood of relief, a big relief for the population for the time being, as the people will start returning back to their homes. This is the step connected with the release of four Israeli soldier women. That's it, for the time being, in the Gaza Strip.
Rami, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. That was Rami Al-Magari. He was speaking to us from Gaza, and Jonathan Rege was speaking to us from Tel Aviv. Well, that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you then.
We understand the 4 Israeli hostages are now back in Israeli territory, reunited with their families, and soon will be flown to a hospital in central Israel for further medical examination. As we saw, they crossed in relatively good condition on their feet, which of course is a very relaxing image portrayed to their families, to the Israeli public. We're here at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. This place is usually full on Saturday evenings for the weekly Saturday rally. Not so much in an early morning hour of Saturday, but of course this time was different. Hundreds of people were here watching together, celebrating together as the 4 hostages first appeared in Gaza, handed over from Hamas to the Red Cross, and then images also seen from the handover between the Red Cross and Israeli forces still in Gazan territory, and then over to Israeli territory. A lot of happiness, a lot of joy. At the same time, also a lot of concern. Why so? According to the agreement, all of the women civilian hostages were meant to be released before the hostages. There's still 2 remaining women hostage civilians in Gaza. What is their fate? Are they alive? Are they not alive? Many questions that could perhaps be answered later on in the day, as Hamas is expected to deliver a list detailing exactly which of the 33 hostages of the first phase are alive and who is not. Maybe we will get the uneasy answer later on this afternoon. And also now begins the process of releasing 200 Palestinian prisoners. Why 200? The agreement calls for 50 Palestinian prisoners to be released for every Israeli woman soldier. Therefore, we're speaking of 200 Palestinian prisoners altogether, 120 of which, 30 for each soldier, are prisoners serving life sentences, people convicted of murder. This is a very heavy price that Israel is paying, but this is the price that Israel has to be paying for the very happy fact that another 4 hostages, 4 women soldiers, are back home, back with their families.
And Jonathan, just describe to us the mood at Hostage Square there now. I can hear music in the background.
Yes, and usually at this time of the day, this place is quiet, but of course now is different. Hundreds of people gathered here, watching together, celebrating together. We heard great joy once the hostages appeared for the first time from the Hamas vehicles. A lot of joy. This is something that Israelis have been expecting for a year and 3 months since the war began. I'm looking now at the clock marking the number of days. 476 days. That's the amount of time since these 4 women released today, along with all of the hostages, since they have been kidnapped. There was a lot of anticipation for a move such as this one to happen much, much earlier. There's a lot of criticism on the government saying that a similar deal could have been reached before, could have saved more living hostages who meanwhile died in prison, and could have brought these people home way earlier. But of course, now this is finally happening, and now these 4 women are back. 90 more hostages are still in Gaza. Out of these 90, for 64 of them, mostly men of a young age, there's no real route, no real path for when and how exactly they will be brought back. They're saved for a second phase of the ceasefire. How will that second phase of the ceasefire happen? No one really knows. So a lot of happiness, yes, absolutely. A lot of concern for what may come next, for the fact that 90 Israeli hostages are still in Gaza, and it is not clear if and how many of them will return. The next phase of this stage, the first stage, should take place next Saturday. So we may hopefully see similar images next Saturday. But still, along with the happiness, along with the joy, a lot of concern for the 90 remaining hostages.
And of course, it is an exchange. So, Jonathan, what do we know about the prisoners that Israel is releasing today?
So as mentioned, some 200 Palestinian prisoners are to be released. There was some controversy between Israel and Hamas regarding the names, but we understand that this controversy has been resolved. As opposed to what we saw last week, in which 90 prisoners were released, practically all of them to the West Bank. Now it will be different. Why so? Last week we saw women and children released from prison, and they were sent back home to the West Bank. Israel insisted that every prisoner serving a life sentence, and we're speaking of 120 of those to be released today, will be deported either to Gaza or to a third country, possibly Turkey, possibly Qatar, but away from Israeli territory. So many of them will be released and flown away to a third country or deported to Gaza. Those who are not serving life sentences, not convicted of murder, may perhaps be sent home to the West Bank. The fact that so many prisoners are released is not an easy issue for the Israeli society. It's not easy. Families of many of the people that were killed by these prisoners are, of course, having a terrible experience, but Israel understands that this is the heavy price it has to pay for this happy day, for the happy images that we saw just about an hour and a half ago for Israeli hostages returning home.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Jonathan Regev at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. And now we've got Rami Al-Maghari standing by for us in Khan Yunis, so let's go over and talk to him. Rami, how are Palestinians reacting to this swap deal?
Yeah, actually, the Palestinians are reacting in a sort of joy, sort of a relief to the news about the release of 4 women Israeli soldiers earlier today in Gaza. And this is a step within the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas signed last week. This step is pretty connected with, very much connected and linked with a possible return back of thousands of families, tens of thousands of Palestinian families who have been displaced during the war to their work, to their homes, neighborhoods, towns, workplaces, and others in the Gaza City and northern Gaza Strip. The people here seem joyful about what is going on, seem hopeful that they will be able to return back after 15 months of displacement because of the war, living in tents, running a very hard conditions, at least, or you can say miserable life throughout the southern parts of the Gaza Strip in tents. Now they are going to go back, but actually, many of them express, as we have spoken to them, express their concern, high concern, that their homes have been destroyed and they will go back to find no homes, no dwellings, nothing of their own over there in the northern Gaza Strip and in Gaza City. But in general, they are at least relieved that they will be finally able to get back to their homes in northern Gaza Strip and Gaza City. And hundreds of households, of families have been stationed or have gone just close to the coastal road in the west of Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza Strip, where they are supposed to walk down towards Gaza City about 5 or 7 kilometers until they reach the closest destination to Gaza City from the coastal road or on the coastal road of the Gaza Strip. Earlier today, a statement by the Israeli army warned the people against moving, even if they are going to move on walking, not using the cars or vehicles, against the moving. I warned them against moving because of the what the army says, preparations for the army that are underway for the people to go smoothly. Other people will go using vehicles on the eastern Salah al-Din main road to the east of Gaza City, to the east of Gaza Strip, or in the center of the Gaza Strip. And these vehicles will be checked by or inspected by, as reported by Egyptian delegation helped by the Americans. That's what has been reported. Still, the people have not moved yet after the release of the hostages today, and they are expected to start moving later today or possibly by early tomorrow, Sunday, en route back to their homes and towns in northern Gaza Strip and Gaza City. That's the latest from the ground here.
Yeah, we understand, Rami, that Israel is conducting a large-scale operation in the West Bank. What do we know about that?
Yeah, what we are hearing about this, the people here believe that moving the Israeli actions from the West Bank, from the Gaza Strip to the West Bank, is a part of ongoing Israeli campaigning against the resistance groups, either in Gaza or the armed resistance groups, what they call the armed resistance groups in Gaza or the West Bank. You know that they are moving to Jenin, Jenin is the heart of armed resistance in the West Bank and the stronghold for Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. The way here in Gaza, which is considered to be the stronghold, the most volatile or the highly volatile stronghold for Hamas. Now Israel is moving because of the ceasefire, as there will be no kind of action from Gaza towards Israel because of these operations, Israeli operations in the West Bank. In the past, when there was calm in the region and the territory in Gaza, there was some kind of a response or a reaction from the armed resistance groups, including Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, in support of the Palestinians there in the West Bank. Now the situation is suitable for Israel. That's what we have seen, and we have actually heard from analysts, is very suitable for the Israeli army to go on its actions, military actions over the West Bank. And some analysts actually believe that this action by the Israeli army is a part of the Israeli government's attempts to satisfy the far-right Israeli members of the cabinet, like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who had already opposed the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas that has been signed recently in Doha.
Rami, thank you so much for the update. Rami Al-Maghari in Khan
Yes,
Yunis, appreciate it. Well, more than 10,000 Israeli soldiers have been injured since the conflict in Gaza began in October 2023. And for many, the battlefield has left not only physical scars, but also deep emotional wounds and psychological trauma. Amongst them is Sagi Balaban, a former Israeli soldier who has returned after being discharged, only to face devastation on his first day in Gaza. This is his story.
My name is Sagiv Balaban. I'm 51 years old, married to Maya, and a father to 3 sons, Yoav, Nadav, and Ido. I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. The day after the war started, I looked for a way to contribute because sitting at home just wasn't for me. I heard they were looking for doctors for the unit for identifying fallen soldiers. I contacted them, and after a few days, I was drafted. 6 days after the conflict began, I started my service in the unit. I was in Gaza for about 18 hours before the injury occurred. The incident happened at 9:30 a.m. A mortar shell exploded very close to me. 9 seconds later, another mortar shell fell just 1.5 meters from me. To explain how it feels, imagine being hit by a truck going 200 kilometers per hour. It's incredibly violent. There's a very brief moment of silence, and then chaos breaks out. Noise, shouting, and maybe even gunfire. I don't know. That was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. There were other moments of pain later during rehabilitation, but the tourniquet was excruciating. Lying there in the trauma room with the pain gone due to the morphine, I felt warm and comfortable. That was the most peaceful moment I had from the time of the injury until today. The next thing I remember was waking up in the recovery room, crying for no reason, non-stop. Fortunately, I had the chance to call my children and Maya from the trauma room. I said something very simple: "Pitts, I'm injured. I'm at Tel Hashomer Hospital. I'm okay. Come." Work is a central part of my life. I wake up every morning smiling, excited to go to work because I love what I do. At one point, it wasn't clear if I would be able to operate again. If my right hand hadn't regained function, it would have been catastrophic for me. Today, I'm back to work and performing surgeries, though not at the same pace as before the injury. I'd say I'm working at about 50% of the hours I used to. Because it's a traumatic event, it stays with you. It's something you can't forget. It's always there. For example, a couple of days ago, when the hostages were returned, I felt triggered. Although I was happy, it brought back memories because our mission involved identifying bodies that could have been our hostages. That day wasn't easy for me. I think there's no other way. The hostages need to come back and the conflict needs to stop. But it's clear to me that this is the only way. For me, the return of the hostages a few days ago is just the beginning. Yes, this is the national mission. Without this, there's no victory. Without it, we've lost.
We take a look now at